back here on Red, Right, and Brown, brought to you by Live. We just got done reviewing Trial by Fire on Netflix. Highly recommend you go watch that series because it is very, emotionally, it's a very emotional series. However, it does do a great job of depicting a real life event without necessarily saying that like that's the event in particular that they were necessarily talking about. But I'm very excited for these next two because these next two reviews we're about to do were films that came out in the theaters. And if I remember right, it's been like a week or two since we've really reviewed something in the theater. So I'm very excited with this. I know Tasha got the opportunity to watch this movie. The movie's called Kuttey, came out in the theaters recently. And yeah, Tasha, just like tell us all about the movie experience, because one thing we talk about here is there's just not a lot of people in the seats anymore. But last couple of weeks, I think we've been seeing a little bit of a comeback. What did you experience?
Yeah, so the movie is Kuttey. It's for all of you out there who know what that means. It means dog. It's also a derogatory term for like a corrupt cop, in India. Going to the theater was pretty interesting. There weren't really that many people there. But it was, it's always a treat to go to the theater. I wish I could say seeing this movie was a treat, but I don't agree with that.
Here we go.
Here we go, guys. So the movie came out on Friday. You still got plenty of opportunities to see it if for some unfortunate reason you want to after I finish talking. But so basically the movie is about corruption of, the police force in India, and kind of how these criminals, they kind of underlings, they're like, inspectors, but they're also just straight up criminals, kind of operate in this sort of dark little underworld beneath what's supposed to be like righteous police force, right? So, well, I don't think it was executed very well. I think the director was kind of trying to pull like a little bit of a Tarantino kind of thing, with nonlinear storytelling. It focused on four different kind of like people, I suppose, or like individuals in the same group. And it was four parallel storylines, but it was not tied together very well. It was very, very messy. I also thought it was a little bit graphic. It was a couple minutes late to the movie. So admittedly, I did, miss a couple minutes, but seriously, it was only like 3 or 4 minutes. And I walked into a very graphic, trigger warning here, guys, rape scene, sexual assault. And that was very off-putting. Still had to sit through the next 2 hours, so good Lord. But the story is about these two, we're focused on two cops. One is named Gopal and the other is just known as Baji. And kind of how they sell drugs on the side, but they're also supposed to be very respectable people in the police force. And just, man, the story was a mess, you guys. Like, we don't really know what their motivations were for starting to sell these drugs. We don't know, like, what they wanted in the end. There was no resolution to everybody's story. I will say it was a great pleasure to see Nasruddin Shah again on screen. He played like this big Bombay drug lord, and Tabu, because who doesn't love Tabu. She was a high-ranking inspector in the police force who also ended up like kind of in this drug ring. But yeah, man, guys, I don't know what to say. There was a lot of violence. There was a lot of attempts at, an homage to film noir, but it didn't quite work. Just gratuitous killing, I have to say. Like, I think I asked myself, why are they shooting people pretty much like every couple minutes? Yeah, it just didn't work very well. It could have been a really poignant commentary on, I think, corruption in police force and corruption in those kinds of, what do you call them? They're not armed forces, but, like those kinds of things in general.
And those roles and those occupations.
Yes, exactly. But I think it super fell flat. Really, Shining Star was I just sat through the second half of this movie just for Tabu, like, which definitely recommend that. Yeah, there's other storylines are like the daughter of this, this big drug ring guy. She falls in love with her driver and they're trying to figure out how to get out of like the clutches of her dad. And they're all after this one armored car that has 4 crores, which is about, what is that? Like a million, sort of like 1,000,000 rupees. So 4 million rupees together. And that's like their big prize because everybody needs this money, right? Everybody is corrupt. Everybody's trying to sell drugs. Yeah. It was, I think this was a school project actually by the director, Aasmaan Bhardwaj. He went to School of Visual Arts in New York and just kind of a little, he got an opportunity because his parents gave him the opportunity. And sometimes, that just doesn't quite work. So I think hard pass, you guys. I don't know about this film. It was very too much violence, I think, for my palate.
Yeah, whenever it comes to these like graphic scenes, I'm not always sure what the intention is supposed to be like, because they're very uncomfortable to watch. Like they're very, very uncomfortable to watch, and they're very long scenes too. So I always kind of question what the intention is and if it could have been done in another light. But as you said, like this is a great theme that could have been really poked and prodded, but it was ultimately kind of fell flat. So I don't know. Hopefully we do see more, of these themes do come up, because I know that like once themes are explored frequently, like there are a few that kind of, rise above the pack and like, really do stick within like, cinema history. However, I think there's been a lot of attempts to kind of picture like a fraud cop in Hindi cinema. And I don't know, I haven't seen one that was just like super, super, super compelling. Yeah, a lot of times they turn into these like, action movies that aren't really telling the narrative. So I don't know if that's how you felt with this one, but from what I've seen in the past, it kind of sounds like it's following that same playbook.
Definitely. It was definitely falling in that same playbook. Like in filmmaking, everything, even violence, is supposed to further the storyline or further the plot. There's a purpose when somebody dies, or there's purpose when you see someone being, assaulted, or there's a purpose for it. But this film, it felt like there was no purpose. It was just trying to be cooler than I think it had any right to try to be.
And we're back with another review here on Red